The relentless sun scorched the parched earth of the New Mexico territory, casting long shadows over Elijah Harper's modest ranch. Dust devils swirled across the barren fields where once thriving corn stalks had stood tall, now reduced to brittle skeletons by weeks of unrelenting drought. Elijah, a weathered man in his late 50s with calloused hands and a face etched by years of hard labor, stared at the nearly empty tin bucket in his grip. The last few sips of water sloshed weakly at the bottom, a pitiful remnant from his failing well. He knew that within hours his life could change forever, but he couldn't foresee how a single act of kindness would unravel a web of alliances, betrayals, and redemption that spanned generations. Elijah's ranch sat on the edge of the frontier, a place where the line between civilization and wilderness blurred. His late wife, Clara, had been his anchor through the toughest times, helping him carve out this existence from the unforgiving land. But Clara had passed 2 years ago from a fever that no doctor could cure, leaving Elijah alone with his memories and the constant struggle against nature's cruelty. The bank had sent a foreclosure notice just days earlier, 30 days to pay or lose everything. His cattle were skeletal, lowing pitifully in the distance, and his vegetable patch was a graveyard of wilted leaves. With the bucket in hand, he trudged toward what remained of his garden, hoping to salvage a few hardy plants before the heat claimed them entirely. As he approached the weathered fence that marked his property's boundary, Elijah's boot caught on something unexpected. He halted abruptly, his heart skipping a beat. There, sprawled face down in the dirt, was a figure that sent a chill down his spine despite the blazing heat. The man was clearly native long, dark hair tangled with dust and blood, his muscular frame clad in frayed buckskin that bore the marks of a fierce struggle. A deep gash marred his shoulder, oozing blood that had begun to congeal in the sun. In his limp hand, he clutched a bone-handled knife, its blade glinting ominously. Elijah's mind raced. Navajo warriors were known in these parts for their raids, born from decades of conflict with settlers encroaching on their ancestral lands. Stories from town painted them as relentless, driven by a thirst for vengeance against the white men who had taken so much. His neighbors had shared tales around the saloon fire, homesteads burned, livestock stolen, lives lost in the dead of night. "Never trust 'em," Old Man Jenkins had warned just last week. "They'll slit your throat as soon as look at you." Elijah felt a surge of fear. This man could be a scout, a harbinger of trouble. Leaving him to fate seemed the prudent choice. Preserve his water, protect his land, survive another day. But then the stranger stirred faintly, a low moan escaping his parched lips. Elijah noticed the cracks in his mouth, the labored rise and fall of his chest, the way his skin had taken on a pallor from dehydration and blood loss. The wound on his shoulder was festering, flies already buzzing around it. This wasn't a threat. This was a man on the brink of death, much like Elijah's own struggling ranch. Memories flooded back of Clara tending to a wounded traveler years ago. Her gentle insistence that compassion was the true measure of a person's soul. "We're all just trying to make it through, Eli," she'd say. "A little mercy goes a long way." Swallowing hard, Elijah knelt beside the stranger. The man's eyes fluttered open briefly, dark and piercing, locking onto Elijah's with a mix of defiance and desperation before closing again. Without further hesitation, Elijah lifted the bucket and tilted it to the man's lips. The water trickled out, precious drops that could have saved a calf or a crop, but now they revived a potential enemy. The stranger drank greedily, his throat working convulsively until the bucket was empty. Elijah set it down, wondering if he'd just sealed his own doom. What Elijah didn't know was that this act had saved the life of Cale, nephew to Chief Swift Eagle, the revered leader of a formidable Navajo confederation uniting 7 clans. By dawn, his quiet ranch would become the center of a storm involving warriors, hidden treasures, and a conspiracy that could ignite a full-scale war. But first, the revived stranger had a revelation that would thrust Elijah into the heart of it all. Cale struggled to sit up, his dark eyes scrutinizing Elijah with an intensity that made the rancher step back. The knife was still in his hand, but he made no move to use it yet. His voice came out raspy, laced with pain, but his English was surprisingly fluent. "You gave me water." Why? His free hand tested the wound on his shoulder, wincing as fresh blood seeped through. Elijah's mouth felt as dry as the land around them. You were dying. Seemed like the decent thing to do. He eyed the knife warily, calculating the distance to his cabin where his old rifle hung unused for years. Kel's gaze narrowed, searching for deceit. White men don't help Navajo. They shoot, they steal, they drive us from our lands. He paused, his breathing steadying. But you, different. Slowly, he reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew a small, wrapped object. Unfolding the hide revealed a polished obsidian stone carved into the shape of a soaring hawk. I am Cale, nephew of Chief Swift Eagle. You saved my life. Navajo honor demands repayment. Elijah took the stone hesitantly. It felt cool and heavy in his palm, pulsing with an almost supernatural warmth. As he held it, Kel's expression shifted from gratitude to alarm. You don't understand, he said, forcing himself to his feet despite the pain. The 7 clans they come already. My uncle sends warriors to find me. They think white man captured me, killed me. Elijah's stomach nodded. How many? 40, maybe more. Cale gripped Elijah's arm. They see me hurt on your land. They see enemy. But I helped you, Elijah protested. I gave you my last water. Cale nodded grimly. Yes, but my uncle sees only wounded kin near settlers' home. He thinks trap, a distant rumble echoed at thunder, but the pound of hooves. Dust rose on the horizon like a gathering storm. As the cloud grew, Cale revealed more, his words tumbling out in urgency. 3 days passed. My uncle sent me with message to clan leaders. 7 clans unite against the army post 15 miles east. They plan to push soldiers out forever. He glanced at the approaching riders. I carried sacred peace emblems from each chief, proof of unity. Elijah's blood ran cold. You're saying you have proof of a war pact? Worse, Cale admitted, limping toward a cluster of boulders near the fence. Soldiers ambushed me yesterday. They seek emblems, seek to know alliance. I hid them before collapsing here. From under the rocks, he pulled a bundled cloth, revealing ornate items, etched bones, beaded talismans, feathers bound with sinew. 7 emblems. Together, they mean war on Fort Resilience. Hundreds die if succeeds. Elijah stared at the bundle. This wasn't mercy anymore. It was entanglement in a brewing conflict that could engulf the territory. What do we do? If I return them, I'm aiding an attack on my own kind. If not, those warriors will think I stole them. There's another way, Cale whispered as the riders neared. But it makes you betray your people. The warriors arrived in a whirlwind of dust and fury, encircling the ranch with precision. Chief Swift Eagle dismounted, his imposing figure radiating authority, broad shoulders scarred from battles, face painted with symbols of leadership. His eyes locked on Cale, then Elijah, fury simmering beneath a stoic mask. Swift Eagle spoke sharply in Navajo to Cale, who responded with gestures toward the empty bucket and Elijah. The chief's gaze hardened as he turned to the rancher. My nephew says you gave water, saved him. Why does white man help Navajo? Elijah met his stare. He needed it. That's all. The chief circled him slowly. White soldiers kill our children, take our water, break treaties. Now you claim kindness. He halted, voice low. What do you want in return? Nothing, Elijah replied steadily. Cale interjected, holding up the obsidian hawk. Speaking in Navajo, he pointed to Elijah, and the warriors murmured. Swift Eagle examined the stone, his anger giving way to awe. This is Spirit Hawk of the Winds. Cale says it warmed in your hand. Spirits mark you as ally. But doubt lingered. Yet Cale carried emblems of unity. If lost, if you took them, his hand rested on his tomahawk. As warriors began searching, Cale subtly maneuvered near the boulders, his plan unfolding in secret. The search intensified, blood trails discovered leading to the hiding spot. Tension built as stones were moved, the bundle unearthed but only for emblems inside. Swift Eagle's rage ignited. 3 missing. River Clan, Shadow Clan, Storm Klangoni. Cale suggested soldiers took them, but suspicion fell on Elijah. To prove innocence, the chief declared a trial by sacred wind, a ritual where winds would judge truth in a canyon rite. Bound in riding with the party, Elijah felt the hidden emblems Cale had slipped him. Whispered revelations followed. The missing emblems proved betrayal by those 3 clans. planning to sabotage the alliance for personal gain. Storm Clan's Chief Swift Eagle's brother, Thunderhawk, was the mastermind. Arriving at the sacred canyon, preparations for the rite began. Winds howled through carved rocks as the pyre was lit, not fire, but a symbolic wind trial where one stood amid gusting sands. But before it commenced, new riders arrived. Thunderhawk and his allies, accusing Elijah of collusion with the army. Accusations flew. A beaten soldier produced as proof. Chaos loomed as factions divided. Elijah, clutching the emblems, hurled them into the wind pyre, invoking the clan's names. Symbols manifested in swirling dust, exposing the treachery. Battle erupted. Elijah aided Cale against Thunderhawk, turning the tide. Betrayal laid bare. Thunderhawk defeated. Grateful, the clans bestowed riches on Elijah, gold from their caches meant for war, now for peace. His ranch saved, alliances reformed honestly. Elijah's mercy echoed through history. Years had passed since that fateful day in the New Mexico territory, when Elijah Harper's simple act of sharing water with a wounded stranger reshaped the destinies of settlers and Navajo alike. The gold bestowed upon him by the 7 clans had transformed his once struggling ranch into a thriving oasis amid the arid plains. Irrigation ditches now crisscrossed his fields, fed by a new well dug deep into the earth with the help of hired hands. His cattle herd had multiplied, grazing on lush patches of grass that defied the occasional droughts. The cabin had expanded into a sturdy homestead, complete with a wraparound porch where Elijah often sat in the evenings, the obsidian hawk pendant around his neck catching the fading light, a constant reminder of the bonds forged in blood and mercy. Elijah, now in his early 60s, moved with a deliberate pace, his joints aching from a lifetime of labor, but his spirit remained unbroken. The wealth had brought security, yet it also invited envy. Whispers in town painted him as a traitor, a man who had sided with savages over his own kind. Old neighbors like Jenkins avoided him at the general store, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. "How'd a poor dirt farmer like you come by all that gold?" they'd mutter. Elijah ignored them, focusing instead on the annual visits from representatives of the clans. These gatherings, filled with shared meals and stories around the fire, reinforced the fragile peace that had held since the exposure of Thunderhawk's betrayal. Chief Swift Eagle, wiser and more revered with age, had solidified the alliance among the loyal clans, negotiating truces with the territorial government that allowed Navajo lands to remain unmolested. For a time, Cale, fully recovered and risen to the role of war chief, often led these delegations to Elijah's ranch. Their friendship had deepened, built on mutual respect and shared secrets. But peace, as Elijah had learned, was a delicate thread, easily frayed by ambition and old grudges. Unbeknownst to him, shadows were gathering once more, threatening to unravel everything he had helped build. It began on a crisp autumn morning when Elijah rode into town for supplies. The streets of Dusty Creek bustled with the usual mix of cowboys, merchants, and travelers. As he tied his horse outside the mercantile, a commotion drew his attention. A group of rough-looking men, clad in dusty coats and sporting badges that glinted in the sun, were questioning a young Navajo boy no older than 12. The child, wide-eyed and trembling, clutched a small bundle of herbs likely gathered for medicine. "What's the trouble here?" Elijah asked, approaching cautiously. His voice carried the weight of authority earned through hardship. One of the men, a burly figure with a scarred cheek and a deputy's star, turned with a sneer. "None of your concern, old-timer. This little thief was caught sneaking around the stables, probably scouting for his raiding party." The boy shook his head vigorously. "No, sir. Just picking plants for my grandmother. She's sick." Elijah recognized the boys feature similar to those of the River Clan, one of the reformed allies. "Let him go. He's no threat." The deputy laughed harshly. "And who are you to say?" "The Indian lover from the Harper Ranch. Heard you got rich off their gold. Makes a man wonder whose side you're on." Before Elijah could respond, the boy bolted, slipping through the crowd. The deputies gave chase but lost him in the alleys. Elijah felt a knot of unease tighten in his gut. These weren't local lawmen. Their accents hinted at outsiders, perhaps hired guns from the mining companies pushing westward. Rumors had circulated for months about new veins of silver discovered near Navajo lands, drawing greedy eyes from afar. That evening, as Elijah unloaded his wagon back at the ranch, a lone rider approached from the horizon. It was Cale, his face etched with worry, riding harder than usual. "Elijah, my friend," he said, dismounting swiftly. "Trouble brews. Scouts report white men surveyors and armed guards encroaching on our sacred grounds. They dig test pits, claim the land for progress." Elijah invited him inside, pouring coffee from the pot. "Mining outfits, likely. The government promised your lands were protected." Cale's eyes darkened. "Promises break like dry twigs, but worse whispers among the clans speak of unrest. Some young warriors, bitter from past losses, talk of reviving old ways. They say the alliance has made us weak." As they spoke, a distant gunshot echoed across the plains. Both men froze. Racing outside, they spotted smoke rising from the direction of Elijah's eastern pasture. Mounting up, they galloped toward it, finding 3 of Elijah's cows slain, their bodies riddled with bullets. Scrawled in the dirt nearby was a crude message: "Traitors get what's coming." Elijah's hands clenched into fists. "This is no random rustling. Someone's sending a warning." Cale nodded grimly. "To you, or to us. If clans retaliate, peace shatters." What neither knew yet was that this incident was the spark of a larger conspiracy. Thunder Hawk, exiled but not forgotten, had survived in the shadows, nursing his grudge. From hidden camps, he had allied with corrupt mining barons, promising them Navajo lands in exchange for weapons and support to reclaim his power. The slain cattle were just the beginning of a ploy to provoke conflict and draw Elijah back into the fray. Days turned to weeks, and tensions escalated. Elijah's ranch hands reported sightings of shadowy figures at night, tools going missing, fences cut. In town, posters appeared offering bounties for Indian sympathizers. Elijah confronted the sheriff, an old acquaintance named Harlan, who shrugged helplessly. "New deputies are from the Silver Ridge Company. They pull strings higher than me." One stormy night, as lightning cracked the sky, a knock sounded at Elijah's door. Opening it cautiously, rifle in hand, he found a drenched figure, a white man in his 40s, disheveled and bleeding from a head wound. "Please, help," the stranger gasped. "They'll kill me." Elijah hesitated, echoes of that long-ago day with Cale flashing in his mind. Mercy had saved him once, would it again? He pulled the man inside, bandaging his wound by the fire. "Who are you? Who's after you?" The man, introducing himself as Samuel Reed, a former surveyor for Silver Ridge, sipped broth shakily. "I uncovered their plan. The company isn't just mining, they're fabricating claims of Navajo attacks to justify seizing lands. Thunder Hawk, he's their inside man, supplies them with information, stages raids to blame on the clans." Elijah's blood ran cold. "Thunder Hawk, he's supposed to be Gani exiled." Samuel shook his head. "He's building an army of outcasts, promises revenge. They plan a big strike, burn a settler town, blame the loyal clans, spark a war that clears the way for mines." As Samuel spoke, hoofbeats thundered outside. Through the window, Elijah saw torchlight riders circling the ranch, deputies and masked men. "Harper, send out the deserter, or we burn you down." Elijah barred the door, grabbing his rifle. "Get to the cellar," he told Samuel. But it was too late. A window shattered, flames licking the curtains. Gunfire erupted, bullets whizzing through the walls. In the chaos, Elijah returned fire, dropping one attacker. Samuel, armed with a pistol from Elijah's cabinet, joined the defense, but they were outnumbered. As smoke filled the room, a figure burst through the back door. Cale, with a handful of Navajo scouts. "We saw the smoke," he shouted, arrows flying from his bow to fell to more assailants. The battle raged under the storm, lightning illuminating the clashes. Elijah fought side by side with Cale, their alliance tested anew. One deputy lunged at Elijah with a knife, but Samuel shot him down. Finally, the attackers retreated, leaving bodies in the mud. Panting, Elijah surveyed the damage of his home, smoldering but salvageable. "This ends now," he declared. "We exposed them." But Samuel revealed more. "They have forged documents, fake emblems mimicking the old peace ones, to prove clan involvement in raids." hidden in Thunderhawk's camp. Kel's face hardened. We must retrieve them. But my uncle. Swift Eagle forbids direct action, fears breaking truce. Here lay the moral quandary: act covertly and risk being seen as aggressors, or wait and let injustice prevail. Elijah, haunted by memories of Clara's teachings on standing against wrong, chose action. We'll go together. Small group, no clan markings. They set out at dawn, unlikely trio Elijah, Cale, and Samuel riding into the Badlands where Thunderhawk's outcasts hid. The journey was arduous, evading patrols and navigating treacherous canyons. Along the way, debates flared. Samuel argued for turning evidence to the army, Cale for tribal justice, Elijah for a path that preserved peace. Nearing the camp, they encountered a patrol. A skirmish ensued, knives flashing in the moonlight. Elijah, despite his age, held his own, disarming an foe with a well-placed shot. But Samuel was wounded, slowing them. Infiltrating the camp under cover of night, they found the tent with the forgery spindles of fake emblems, maps marking mine sites on Navajo lands, letters from Silver Ridge promising payment. As they grabbed them, alarms sounded. Thunderhawk himself emerged, eyes blazing with recognition. "You again, white traitor, and my nephew's pet." A fierce confrontation followed. Thunderhawk's men surrounded them, but Cale challenged him directly. "Uncle, your betrayal ends here." Thunderhawk laughed. "Betrayal? I seek power. Clans weaken themselves with peace." The fight exploded: fists, knives, gunfire. Elijah protected the wounded Samuel, shooting to wound rather than kill, his conscience weighing each pull of the trigger. Cale dueled Thunderhawk, their familial bond twisting the blade of conflict. In a climactic moment, as Thunderhawk raised his tomahawk, Elijah intervened, tackling him to the ground. "Enough violence," he roared. Subdued, Thunderhawk spat defiance. "You'll never stop progress." With evidence in hand, they escaped, pursued but outmaneuvering the chasers through known trails. Returning, they presented the forgeries to Swift Eagle and the sheriff. The chief, torn between family loyalty and truth, disavowed Thunderhawk publicly. Harlan, bolstered by the proof, arrested the corrupt deputies. But repercussions lingered. Silver Ridge sent lawyers, claiming innocence, dragging matters into courts. Elijah testified, facing cross-examinations that painted him as biased. Debates raged in town halls. Was mercy to natives weakness? Did progress justify injustice? In a twist, Samuel revealed he was no mere surveyor, undercover agent for the territorial governor, planted to root out corruption. His testimony sealed the case. Mines halted, lands protected, peace restored, but scars remained. Elijah rebuilt, Cale strengthened clan unity. Yet, a new threat loomed: rumors of federal troops massing, viewing the alliance as a threat. Decades had woven their threads through the fabric of the New Mexico territory. Since Elijah Harper's ranch became a beacon of uneasy peace between settlers and the Navajo clans. What began as a solitary act of compassion, sharing water with a dying warrior, had blossomed into a legacy of alliances that withstood droughts, skirmishes, and the relentless march of time. Elijah, now in his 70s, bore the marks of a life fully lived, silver hair framing a face lined with wisdom, hands gnarled from toil but steady in purpose. His ranch had grown into a sprawling estate, employing both white hands and Navajo workers who tilled the soil side by side. The obsidian hawk pendant still hung from his neck, a talisman of the bonds that had saved countless lives. The annual gatherings with the clans had evolved into grand feasts, where stories of the past were rattled under starlit skies. Chief Swift Eagle, though aged and walking with a cane carved from sacred wood, remained the pillar of the alliance, his voice carrying the weight of history. Cale, now a seasoned elder himself, had taken on the mantle of chief after Swift Eagle's gradual retirement, leading with a blend of fierce protection and diplomatic finesse. The peace emblems, once symbols of potential war, now adorned a shared monument on the Ronka stone cairn inscribed with names from both worlds, commemorating those lost to betrayal and those saved by truth. Yet, as the 1890s dawned, the winds of change howled fiercer than ever. The United States government, hungry for expansion, eyed the Western territories with insatiable greed. Railroads snaked across the landscape, bringing waves of immigrants and speculators. Whispers of manifest destiny echoed in Washington, justifying the displacement of native peoples. In Dusty Creek, now a booming town with saloons, banks, and a telegraph office, tensions simmered. Anti-Indian sentiments flared among newcomers, fueled by sensational newspapers decrying savage uprisings that were often fabricated or provoked. Elijah sensed the storm brewing during a routine trip to town. Posters plastered on walls called for volunteers to protect settlements from red threats. At the general store, he overheard a group of young men, fresh off the train from the east, boasting about joining a militia. "Time to civilize this land proper," one said, spitting tobacco. "Heard those Navajos are hoarding gold or gold." Elijah's jaw tightened. The old prejudices had never fully died, merely hibernated. Returning home, he found Cale waiting on the porch, his expression grave. "Elijah, riders came to our camps last night, Army scouts. They demand surveys of our lands, say it's for reservation adjustments." Elijah poured them whiskey, the bottle a gift from a past truce. "Government's pushing boundaries again. But our treaties are paper," Cale interrupted bitterly. "Ink fades, but greed endures. Worse, some of our young ones grow restless. They hear tales of Geronimo's resistance down south, dream of glory." That night, as Elijah lay awake, gunfire shattered the silence. Bolting upright, he grabbed his rifle and a well-oiled companion and rushed outside. Flames lit the barn, horses whinnying in panic. Shadowy figures fled into the darkness, but one lagged. Caught in the moonlight, a white man in militia garb, a bandana slipping to reveal a familiar scarf mark of a Silver Ridge remnant from years ago. Extinguishing the fire with his workers' help, Elijah uncovered evidence, a discarded satchel containing dynamite fuses, and a map marking Navajo villages. "This isn't random," he muttered. "It's orchestrated." Dawn brought reinforcements and a dozen warriors, armed but restrained. Examining the map, Kel's eyes narrowed. "These targets are sacred sites. If hit, it forces retaliation." What they didn't know was the depth of the conspiracy. Thunder Hawk, twice defeated and presumed dead after a botched escape attempt years prior, had resurfaced like a ghost from the canyons. Embittered and cunning, he had ingratiated himself with high-ranking officials in the Indian Affairs Bureau. Posing as a reformed scout, in secret, he fed them false intelligence, claims of a massive Navajo uprising, complete with forged documents echoing the old emblems. His goal: spark a war that would annihilate the loyal clans, allowing him to claim leadership over the survivors while pocketing government bounties. The attacks escalated. Navajo hunting parties returned with tales of poisoned water holes. Settler farms on the periphery were raided, arrows left as evidence that pointed to Kel's people. Elijah's ranch became a neutral ground, hosting emergency councils where clan elders debated responses. "We strike back," urged a hot-blooded young warrior named Tano. "Blood for blood." Swift Eagle, frail but commanding, raised his hand. "Violence begets chains. Remember the hawk's lesson, mercy breaks cycles." Elijah echoed him. "I've seen enough graves. We expose the lies, like before." But doubt crept in. Elijah questioned his role as a white man meddling in native affairs. Was he preserving peace or prolonging inevitable conflict? Cale pulled him aside. "Your mercy started this path. Without it, we'd be dust." A turning point came when a wounded messenger arrived at the Ronka boy from the clans. Arrow in his leg. "Ambush by whites dressed as us," he gasped. They head to town, plan to burn the bank, blame Navajo. Elijah, Cale, and a small mixed group, white hands and warriors, strode out. Arriving at Dusty Creek under cover of dusk, they found chaos, masked men torching buildings, whooping in mock war cries, feathers crudely attached to hats. Gunfire erupted as Elijah's party intervened. In the melee, Elijah faced a militia leader, recognizing him as a government agent from descriptions. "This ends your interference, old man," the agent snarled, pistol raised. Elijah dodged, his shot grazing the man's arm. Cale felled another with an arrow. The fight spilled into the streets, townsfolk emerging confused. "They're faking it," Elijah shouted. "Look no real Navajo." As masks fell, revelations poured. Captured attackers confessed under duress, naming Thunder Hawk as the puppet master. But before celebrations, word came federal troops marched from Fort Resilience. Orders to quell the rebellion. The group raced back, rallying clans and sympathetic settlers. Debates raged around campfires. Fight the army head-on, risking annihilation, or surrender lands for hollow promises. Elijah proposed a bold plan: infiltrate the fort with evidence. Appeal directly to the commander, a man rumored to value honor. Sneaking through lines under moonless sky, Elijah and Cale posed as scouts, Samuel's old contacts providing disguises. Inside, they confronted Colonel Vance, a grizzled veteran. These forgeries prove provocation, Elijah said, spreading maps and letters. Vance scrutinized them, face hardening. If true, this is treason. But Thunderhawk, embedded as an advisor, burst in lies. They're the agitators. A standoff and Swedgens drawn, loyalties tested. Thunderhawk lunged at Cale, knife flashing. Elijah intercepted, wrestling him down. In the struggle, documents scattered, revealing Thunderhawk's signature on betrayal pacts. Vance ordered arrests. Stand down. Truth prevails here. Troops halted, investigations launched. Thunderhawk, cornered, confessed in rage. You whites take everything, I just wanted my share. Exposed, he was tried and imprisoned. The government, embarrassed, reaffirmed treaties, granting expanded protections. Clans prospered, intermarriages blurring lines. Elijah, in his final years, watched grandchildren mixed heritage play on the ranch. Peace, hard won, endured. In reflecting on this tale of mercy amid turmoil, one ponders the cycles of violence and injustice that plague human history. Acts of compassion, like Elijah's, challenge us to break those chains. Yet, in a world rife with greed and prejudice, how often do we choose mercy over might? Readers, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe violence is ever justified against injustice, or does mercy always pave the better path? Take a stand, express your views on these timeless themes. Your insights could spark meaningful discussions, keeping the spirit of this story alive.